I'm Jason Aponte. The Brandon Aiyuk story takes another turn with Adam Schefter joining Pat McAfee. Ricky Pearsall finally signs. And let's bust some Brock Purdy narratives around him. Let's do it. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. Jason Aponte. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. A lot of content still coming through. So as we draw nearer and nearer to training camp, which is a bit of a, I would say, soft deadline for the Brandon Aiyuk talks, the more and more that it feels like things are going to find a way to get themselves done. And Adam Schefter went on Pat McAfee, almost confirming some of the things that we've thought about. This team wouldn't move Brandon Aiyuk right now, especially when they have all the leverage and they're trying to win a Super Bowl. But I want to play for you actually what Adam Schefter said, and it was two clips. So bear with me while we share these screens real quick. So let's share the screen. Okay, let's do it. All right.
While he is blogging an entire offseason, I guess, of conversation about contract with the San Francisco 49ers. He literally says they don't want me back while talking to Jaden Daniels, sorry. Jaden Daniels then starts screaming. So now everybody's like, well, he's going to be a commander all of a sudden. Brandon Aiyuk is friends with the rookie quarterback that was just drafted because their time at Arizona State. He told them that he's no longer in Niners. Jaden Daniels, as a rookie quarterback who hasn't played a game yet, has enough pull to say, hey, we need to go get Aiyuk. Maybe that's the case. What's happening over there? Obviously an incredible ball player. We'd love to have him here in Indianapolis. Obviously the Commanders would love to have him. I'm sure there's like 30 other teams that would love to have him. How's this end up and how did we get here, Shefty?
Well, I think what happened here is, let me state for the record that the 49ers absolutely do want Brandon Aiyuk back, despite what he says, but they don't want him back, as he thinks, at the price that he's seeking. And so that's where the breakdown occurs at this point in time. They've had contract talks throughout the offseason, and at one point it seemed like they were closing in on a deal only to see the wide receiver market explode. We've seen Jalen Waddle come in with a very strong deal that averages about $28 million guaranteed, or $28 million a year with a lot of guaranteed money. Justin Jefferson comes in at 35. And I think once some of these wide receiver deals started getting done, the Eagles did both their receivers, I think the number might have shifted in Brandon Aiyuk's mind. But the Niners have always wanted him back. There have been conversations at various points with other teams where they asked if he were available. The Niners never were serious about trading him, and they want him back. But the problem is they can't get a deal done right now. So Brandon Aiyuk is interpreting that as they don't want me anymore. No, they want him here. They just don't want him at the number that he wants to be there at, with what the wide receivers are going for in this day and age. And yes, everybody knows he played with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. At one point prior to the draft, the Commanders, Niners had some discussions that never went anywhere about a potential trade. And the Niners wanted to hold on to him, and they still want to hold on to him. And they're not looking to deal him. Now, could his stance, his public comments, the lack of any contract talks in recent days, weeks, influence their decision later on? Sure. But this is a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl. They're not trying to move on from Brandon Aiyuk. And we see what the Bengals are doing with T. Higgins. He's not going to get a long-term deal done there, but they're going to hold on to him this season, and he'll become a free agent after the year. And I think it's a similar situation where the Niners aren't looking to move on from Brandon Aiyuk. They do want him there, but there's a disconnect on the price that he believes and they believe he should be paid for this upcoming season.
In T. Higgins' vlog, we saw him basically understand that he's going to be with the Bengals for 1 year. Like it was almost like he acknowledged, like, I'm going to be there for 1 year.
Okay, so obviously, again, the same thing. And there is a little bit of frustration about waiting around for training camp, which is the 49ers' MO, 100%, when it comes to Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, all of those things. But in the face of this one kind of feels like it backfired a little bit, as alluded to by Adam Schefter, when it comes to the market. And Brandon Aiyuk seeing these contracts and says, yeah, I want a little bit more now. Yesterday's price is not today's price. But at the end of the day, it's still a place that is a little bit more tricky than the Deebo Samuel situation in terms of they have the fifth-year option. they have a franchise tag in their back pocket, right? And this isn't like Debo, because Debo needed a deal and he had no fifth-year option. Ultimately, I still believe that this gets done. I really do. And I really believe that they're probably a few $1,000,000 away and structure away, meaning he may want a little bit more guaranteed. He may want a little bit more annual value. I think that's where the negotiations are. When you start a negotiation, no matter what it is, you always start with a number that you'd like to get, but you don't think you're going to get. And then you kind of just meet somewhere in the middle. And again, this is just playing out a little bit more in public than maybe some of the other ones. I mean, with Nick Bosa, there was no sort of discussion, anything like that. Obviously with George Kittle, all that stuff, like there really wasn't any of this. But right now, this is just playing out in the public a little bit more, between what TJ Houshmandzadeh has been saying, between what Matt Mayoko has been kind of talking about with fifth-year option is very much on the table. It'll still play itself out. I still ultimately believe that the 49ers will get this done much closer to training camp. My only concern, and I've voiced this many times for anybody who has watched any of the recent shows, is I don't want this to bleed past training camp or into the season anyway. Like I don't want Brandon Aiyuk to show up week 1. I need Brandon Aiyuk every single day at camp. I need this team rolling. This is the last little loose end that they need to tie up. This is it. So tie it up, because you have to go get it this year. And I don't want, a slow start or, any sort of that. Like, it's just right now, I need this team to roll as soon as they get to training camp and as soon as they get into the season, especially considering how easy the schedule is early on. Like the 49ers have to rattle off wins and roll early on and just keep rolling. And I think, again, Nick Bosa talked about being there a little bit later, that it didn't really help. I think fans alluded to that right away. They could see that right away he just wasn't the normal self, even though he had a fine season. I don't want to, say anything crazy about Nick Bosa, but he even alluded to the fact that it took him a little while to get into shape and all that. So again, I don't think this team can afford this season any sort of slip up, slow start. And I don't want to see that happen with Brandon Aiyuk here. But it does sound like Adam Schefter is saying the 49ers obviously want him. I thought realistically, I never thought that when Brandon Aiyuk said they don't want me anymore, that was anything more than a troll move or just a joke, right? Like, why would you say that while they're recording you? All of that stuff. Like, it's just really like, it just felt very staged. And it felt very tongue-in-cheek what Brandon Aiyuk was saying. So I never really took it for granted or took it seriously or anything like that. Like, it never was something that I was just like, oh, no, because, going back to the Debo negotiations, I think we all remember Debo Samuel was in a nightclub and somebody bought the bottles and the girls brought the signs out and the sign said, Debo's returning, and he's like, no. And everybody was losing their mind. Well, what happened? Debo gets the deal done. So again, it's the frustration around this whole era of negotiation on social media, on the internet, in the media is more the source of frustration for people than the tactics. The tactics seem like a playbook, and it's getting worn out now at this point. Take your team out of your bio, unfollow the team, scrub all your like all that stuff. It's getting tired, and I think that's what fans are frustrated with. But this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future in this social media era. Playing out through the media and on social media. So yeah, that again, that's just what Adam Schefter said. So take it for what it is, right? I think we all had a big issue with Adam Schefter, during the Mac Jones stuff, and everything as well too. But hey, it is what it is. We'll take it. Shout out to everybody in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. Next bit of news: Ricky Pearsall's finally signed, and he was the last draft pick that needed to be signed. And this is a tweet from David Lombardi, which breaks down all the details of Ricky Pearsall's contract. 4 years, $12.54 million fully guaranteed, $5.94 million signing bonus, $2.3 million 2024 salary cap hit, and obviously the fifth-year option. So the 49ers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, before the Pearsall deal were around $32 million in cap. That's going to be $30 million now. So when it comes to, again, talking about the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, I think the 49ers were like try to get like a very like wide scope of what their cap situation is going to look like, not only going into the season, but going into next season, because I believe they definitely want to roll over money because of Brock Purdy's contract, all these other players, maybe Mooney Ward, all of them. Like, we all assume that when the 49ers have cap space around, that, oh, well, they can make a deal at the deadline, or, they, bring in, like, I mean, they can for sure. But I think more of it is just going into next season. And, the cap's going to move up a little bit more. The cap spaces they're rolling over is certainly going to help. Obviously, they'll make some tough decisions with unloading money with certain players. And we've speculated on who we think it is. But the 49ers right now are at $30 million. I think that's obviously more than enough money, because a Brandon Aiyuk extension would obviously lift that, and it would give them more relief. So yeah, again, Ricky Pearsall signed and deal done. So the entire draft class signed finally. Give me 1 second, guys. Woo, hot day today in New York, about 97 degrees or something like that. Good God, even with the AC on, it's not bearable. But Ricky Pearsall signed. Adam Schefter speaks on Brandon Aiyuk. Of course, they want him back. The money is there. It's all about meeting in the middle, and we're going to figure out how to get it done. But good for the young man for getting paid. All right. So let me take this one away. I wanted to kind of get on here and talk about some of the things that are said about Brock Purdy. And I've written about it on Niners Nation, right? And I talked about it on the Bully Ball podcast with Steph. Shout out to Steph. About, everyone just says, hey, Brock Purdy's a dink and dunk guy, or he's carried by the offense, or he's carried by Kyle Shanahan. Okay, well, these same offenses, while they have produced quarterbacks at their highest level, i.e. Jimmy Garoppolo, i.e. Matt Ryan, Nick Mullins, right? Nobody's taken this offense to the level that Brock Purdy has, right? And sure, having the best running back in football helps. Having the best tight end in football helps. Having the best left tackle in football helps, right? Having two very good wide receivers helps. But there are some narratives out there that are just going to be busted at this point, right? Everything is assumed it's all dink and dunk, right? And I've got an article from, and I'm gonna present it first before I get into the other stuff that I wanted to get into that I wrote about on Niners Nation as well too. So top 10 quarterbacks by targeted depth in 2023. Obviously, you would think that Brock Purdy would be here in the short passing, under 10 yards, minimum 200 attempts. He's not top 10. In fact, he's not top 15. He's top 18. And this, I want to make sure I preface by saying this is based on PFF grades, okay? This isn't passing yards, because the person who had the most passing yards throwing under 10 yards, brace yourself, everyone, is Patrick Mahomes, 2,447 yards. Behind him, Jared Goff, 2,385. And then Dak Prescott, 2,075. Well, look at Josh Allen, 2,274. So two guys with rocket arms. Justin Herbert's number 2, by the way, in grades. Two guys with rocket arms are great throwing the ball short. Kind of funny how that works, right? Okay. So maybe you're thinking, you know what? Brock Purdy's got to be in the intermediate one, right? He's definitely got to be in the 10 to 19 yards range. Well, no, he's not. Lamar Jackson leads with 95.5 passing grade. And the most passing yards in this intermediate range is actually Tua Tagovailoa, 1,541 yards. Jared Goff is behind him, 1,471. So, wait a minute. Where would Brock Purdy be on here? Oh, you mean deep passing, 20 yards or more, minimum 50 attempts, 99.9 passing grade, almost perfect. And I want to read what was being said about it. So, a popular narrative among Brock Purdy's detractors is that he gets by on dink and dunk passes while letting his skilled teammates do all the work. Not like we've heard that one before. However, Purdy ranked just 18th in short passing grade. His deep ball, on the other hand, was nearly perfect, resulting in a seemingly impossible 99.9 mark on balls 20 or more yards downfield. Purdy completed 30 of 53 passes for 956 yards, 11 touchdowns, only 1 interception, while having a big-time throw to turnover-worthy play ratio of 17-2. One of the most shocking discoveries while compiling this list is that Patrick Mahomes was the second lowest graded passer on deep balls. Only Baker Mayfield had a lower deep ball grade than Mahomes. Now, we all have to agree, right, that with Patrick Mahomes, it's a little bit because his receivers can't catch, right? Marquez Valdez-Scantling, right? And they didn't have any guys that could separate, right? Okay, that's fine. But the Chiefs did transform their offense into an underneath and yak offense, right? When Tyreek Hill was there, it was all explosives. Well, they get their explosives now in the run game, and they get their explosives now on yak. So Patrick Mahomes leads in short passing. But wait a minute, Brock Purdy, deep passing, well, that doesn't really jive with dink and dunk, does it? And it's not like it's some small sample size. It's minimum attempts right away, right? Does he have the least amount of passing yards probably on that list? Yes. I don't think it's the last. I don't think he's last. He has 956. The leader is CJ Stroud, 1,204. And Tua Tagovailoa is second with 1,172. But almost 1,000 passing yards on deep passes. And that's only 53 of his throws. So 53 of his throws, that's a small sample size considering that he threw the ball, 300, 400 times, right? Like, that's still something where it's like all of this stuff is being a little bit busted, these narratives. They're just busting like now at this point. Because just because they're not taking those throws, and so much of the stuff that I talk about, like when I do my film breakdowns on the offense, so much of the stuff is just design shots. Now there's players for that, but everything else is, hey, hit this, hit that. Like, it's Purdy understands where to go with the ball. That doesn't mean just chuck and duck. And he doesn't do that. And that's not what Kyle Shanahan draws up for him. If he draws up something where you see him throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey and he runs for 10 yards, that's because that was a design read. If you see on a shallow drag that George Kittle's wide open because it's schemed open due to a clear out and a conflict of high-low on a defense, that's what it is, right? So this whole idea that Brock Purdy gets dinged for the way the offense runs and what Kyle Shanahan wants him to do is silly. Because now you're telling me you don't understand how the offense works. Now you're telling me you don't understand what these plays are designed to do, how they're designed to work. And you're just watching the box score now at this point. And you're just watching where he's throwing the football. If the throw is there, he's going to take it. If it's not, he's going to take the throw he's supposed to take. That's what Kyle Shanahan is so comfortable with Brock Purdy. You've never seen him more comfortable with a quarterback at all, right? Certain games, he would just kneel on the ball because he just wants to get the half. No, we got Brock now. Let's throw the ball. Let's go. Fourth quarter, let's go. Let's keep going. Like, we can spread everybody out and throw the football now. This is the difference. This is the difference. And again, it's hard to explain to people that don't watch the games. It's hard. It's easy to explain to it's harder to explain to the people that just watch the highlights. Because you'll see a throw to Christian McCaffrey where he shakes somebody and he goes the rest of the way. Or Deebo Samuel breaks 5-6 tackles. And you're like, oh, he's getting carried. But you're missing the plays where he absolutely hits the right person when he's supposed to, understands what he sees on the defense, and throws the ball 20 yards down the field on a back shoulder to Brandon Aiyuk that isn't going to just light up the highlight reels. So it's hard to explain to people that don't watch the 49ers all the time. It really is. And again, it's so much easier when a narrative is beat in people's head. I mean, a lie gets around the world 3 times before the truth has a chance to get out of bed. And that's exactly what this narrative is. And I've got more. I've got a little bit more of when it comes to this. All of this stuff can easily be disproven by watching the game, understanding the offense, understanding that, yes, God forbid a quarterback has help, as if every quarterback in the history of the game didn't have help. Like, Peyton Manning wasn't throwing the mailmen and milkmen. No, he had Reggie Wayne, and he had Marvin Harrison, and he had Dallas Clark, and Edgerrin James. Like, I don't understand this argument. I don't. So again, it's hard to explain to people that don't watch the games, that don't understand what they're looking at. But it's so much easier to spout up a narrative to get people riled up and get people upset, right? Like, that's the part. Let's get to the super chat real quick from Junior. Do you think the 49ers and Brandon meet in the middle and get a deal done? Love your work, brother. All hail Brock Purdy. Thank you, Junior. Appreciate that. Yeah, I started the show with what Adam Schefter said. He said the 49ers do want him. They just don't want him at the price that he wants. I think, again, this is all about meeting in the middle at this point. It's going to come down to the smaller details to get this done, whether it's guaranteed money, whether it's average annual salary, whatever it is. I think Brandon Aiyuk is looking at the caliber of receivers that are getting a certain amount of money and saying, yeah, me too. Like, me too, right? Like, the Jalen Waddle one is the one that mirrors his production. So he's looking at Jalen Waddle and saying, man, I've done that. Like, literally, I've done that. He doesn't have the numbers that Amon-Ra St. Brown has because they use him much more and they throw the ball to him a lot more. But he's looking at Jalen Waddle like, hey, wait a minute, those are the same numbers. Why shouldn't I, right? And if Jalen Waddle doesn't sign that deal, I don't know what number they have in their head, but they would have been fine with that if it wasn't what Jalen Waddle was receiving. Now Jalen Waddle has now put this thing into, wait a minute, we've got the same sort of numbers. Wait a minute, I want that now. And I deserve that. And who's to say he doesn't, right? But I think the frustrating part about this is the negotiations continue and the 49ers are kind of using his usage and his statistics against him, right? And I spoke about this with Brad, and I'll reiterate it here. When you go to your boss and ask for a raise and you say, hey, listen, I've been doing my job very well. I've been efficient. I've met all my deadlines. I'm at all the meetings. I carry these meetings. I want a raise. So your boss says, we value you. We love what you do here. We want you here. And then they pull out a notepad and they say, but you called out this day. You're a little late this day. And that's the part with negotiations that's a little bit hard, right? So if you're Brandon Aiyuk and you walk in and say, hey, I want this amount of money. Well, you only had 76 receptions last year. 2 years ago, it was kind of rough for you, trying to get on board, right? Like, it sucks. It's the nasty side of negotiation, but it happens in all sports. Teams have to find a way to justify giving you money, right? I think we all understand Brandon Aiyuk's importance to this team. Not just receiving, obviously with the blocking. How many times have you seen Christian McCaffrey rolling to the end zone with Brandon Aiyuk blasting a safety into oblivion, right? He plays the way that the 49ers want him to play. Only player to successfully get out of the doghouse. I think we all understand his importance. And I think we all agree that if you fed Brandon Aiyuk 130, 140 targets, he'd be up at the top of all the statistical categories. Unfortunately, with the way that this offense is, how many mouths there are to feed. I mean, Christian McCaffrey caught 84 balls last season. That's a running back. That's tough. A lot of other teams don't have a running back that gets the ball that much. When you look at the way that they run this offense, that's probably the part that they're having problems with in terms of how can we justify giving you all this money when looking at this, and this, right? Like, and that's the hard part about this. Negotiations are usually nasty. When you get into the mud of it, you feel disrespected 100%. I know Brandon Aiyuk is walking around feeling disrespected because he's like, man, I've done this, I've done that, I've done everything you wanted. I just had a 1,300-yard season, second team All-Pro. And yet these conversations have to happen. Happens in every single sport, right? Doesn't matter who the athlete is. So it's tough. Do we want this to get done? 100%. Do I think it gets done? 100%. But I think they do meet in the middle, and I think there is a little bit of just people need to contextualize negotiations and understand that things get a little nasty. They do. They get a little nasty. They get a little contentious. There's times where people just get up and outright walk out of the meeting, and then you get back in the room again and you try again. It's almost like a divorce mediator, right? Some days are good. Some days you're going to argue. Some days you're like, hey, we're not going to do any of this, and we're just going to walk out. So we'll see. But I definitely think they get it done. Shout out to all you guys in here, man. Shout out to Republicans Are Human. Jason spitting absolute facts right now. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. So I know you guys are frustrated, right? Like with the whole contract negotiation thing. And again, it's another offseason of it. It's going to be like this when you have this many high-end guys, right? You hear the rumblings about Trent Williams, right? Trent Williams is looking around and saying, man, Brock Purdy's going to be here. I want to be here as long as he's going to be here because I want to be in the chase for the Super Bowl all the time. A lot of this stuff is going to continue when you have this high-end talent, when you have guys that you have to pay. It's just the nature of the business. And with the cap, with now the idea that you're going to have to pay the going rate of Brock Purdy, which that's another one that's going up by the day. Tough decisions are going to have to be made. They're going to have to be made. But sticking with Brock Purdy, right? I came across something that I wrote about for Niners Nation, and it was something that I think a lot of people, another narrative that a lot of people really, really, really gravitate to and use against Brock Purdy, when in reality, it's not the flex that you think it is. And what I mean by that is, let me pull up the screen real quick. What I mean by that is well, first off, let me start with this. Yes, Rich, we know they're last in attempts. I didn't say that they needed to throw the ball more. I was just saying, Rich, please don't yell at me, man. Please. I'm on a roll here. All right. I hear a lot of talk about the 49ers drop back passing game, right? I would love to see Brock just step back and just be able to drop back and throw the football, right? Like, I hear that a lot. And I wish our drop back passer game was a little bit better. So shout out to Carter Donick. I want to make sure I give him proper credit because he's the one who came up with this chart. And it's the difference between passer rating on play action and drop back. And the difference between the two. Now, clearly, off play action, you should see a spike in your increase, right? Especially when it's performed effectively. You get those second level defenders closer to the line of scrimmage. You get guys rushing to the ball as an edge rusher. And then you get people playing run, committing to the run, and you get some wide throwing lanes. You get some really good throwing lanes, right? 49ers are one of the best teams at doing this, clearly, because they have such a potent running game, right? So, who's number one off play action? Passer rating. That's right, it's Brock Purdy. He's number 3 in the difference between his play action passer rating and his drop back passer rating. However, Joe Flacco's number 1 with almost a 50-point difference, but his passer rating dips from 121.3 to 72.4. 72.4 is not good. Kenny Pickett, obviously, 109.7 to 75.6, 34.1. That's not good. Brock Purdy's drops 32.5 to 100.6, which is number 3 overall in the NFL on straight dropbacks, behind Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins. 107.7 for Prescott, 101.9 for Cousins, 100.6 for Brock Purdy. So while there is a 32.5 rating difference, 100.6 is really, really good. And the only other quarterback that has double, meaning 100 and 100, is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, 108.2, 101.9. Only a 6.3 difference. Kirk Cousins, you can see why Kyle Shanahan likes him, right? Does everything kind of right. I wanted to point out something else that I thought was really funny. Patrick Mahomes has 0 difference between play action and drop back. 94.1, 94.1. Don't ask me to explain. Don't ask me to explain it. So, your second tier group, Jordan Love, 28.5 difference. 118 on play action, 89.5 on dropbacks. CJ Stroud, 122.7, which is second behind Brock Purdy. CJ Stroud's pretty good. 95.1 dropback, 27.6 rating difference. Lamar Jackson, 121 off play action. That makes absolute sense. When you consider his own legs, their running game, that makes absolute sense that he's so high up. 93.9, right? I did want to point out that Dak Prescott is at the bottom here with Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, Sam Howell, and Baker Mayfield as the only quarterbacks with a negative difference from play action to drop back. And Dak Prescott goes from 95 on play action to 107.7. But I'll be honest with you, the reason that I know why that's happening is because they can't run the football. They could never run the football. So why would you, if you're facing Dallas, are you nervous? If you're nervous and you're going, right? Like, if you're going to look at him and say, oh my God, are we nervous about Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle? No, but that's why he was so good on dropbacks. Dak Prescott had a pretty good year. So, look, the point is more than anything, is like when you're looking at these things objectively and you're looking at all the quarterbacks, right? And you have the usual suspects here, right? You have the usual suspects, right? In terms of the drop back passer rating. So You got Kirk Cousins, you got Dak Prescott, you got Brock Purdy, right? And then you're looking at guys like Stafford, 91.6, 94.8 for Tua, Stroud, 95.1, Josh Allen, 93.2, Jared Goff, 92.8. But realistically, you're looking at a guy who was incredibly efficient last year. The offense was incredibly efficient last year. He did everything that the offense needed pretty much in this. And, again, I think it was Brian Peacock that brought this up on last show. And I wanted to, I think this is a good way to segue off of this. Is I think he was talking with Croc on Locked On, and this is what they were talking about, right? And he said, Croc asked him, if the 49ers, just for one game for the Super Bowl, the 49ers for one game could have swapped Brock Purdy for Matthew Stafford, would they have won that game? And I don't know what Croc's response was, but Brian's was, well, I'd like for them to not muff a punt. I'd like for Christian McCaffrey not to fumble the football. Those things absolutely contributed. But Brian, and I think I agree, Brock Purdy wasn't the reason the team lost the Super Bowl at all. I think that's another popular narrative, I think, between people who just don't like Brock Purdy. I don't think that Brock Purdy was the reason the 49ers lost the Super Bowl. Now, would Matthew Stafford elevate them to win it? I think Brian's argument was, what if Matthew Stafford has one of those games where he's just throwing the football to the other team? Wow, Matthew Stafford had an incredible season last year, by the way. Statistically, it probably wasn't one of his better seasons, but I'm talking about like eye test, keyhole throws, some of these throws off platform, and just Stafford was incredible last year. So he's talking about that Matthew Stafford. So does Stafford give you a chance in a 1-for-1 thing? Maybe. But you're also running the risk of Stafford having one of those games where he's throwing the ball to the other team and you can't explain it, right? Although I didn't really see too much of that last year. I mean, the game that they lost against the Lions, it wasn't because of him. He was great in that game. He was great in that game. Oh, we got a super chat up here. Let's see. 49ers throwback. Good looking, man. Thank you. Why can't the fans be excited? It took the 49ers 20 years to find a franchise quarterback. Colin Brock Purdy will be a great duo for years to come. Go Niners. I don't think it's 49er fans that I'm talking to here, like with this, right? I'm sure there's a subset of 49er fans that are just like, oh, I don't want Brock here, or I don't believe in Brock. I think that's a small minority. I think more of this has to do with kind of just overall popular narratives, whether it be in the media, on social media, whatever. But I think 49er fans are absolutely excited. Absolutely. I'm sure there's a small subset of fans that are saying, I don't know if you can pay him $50 million. I don't know if you could pay him $55 million. That's fine. But that's the nature of the business. And when you have someone who has this season where he puts up these numbers, operates the offense in the way that they needed, had those 2 comeback wins in Green Bay and Detroit, it's the going rate. It's just the price of doing business. So I don't know if it's fans. Throwback. I don't think it's 49er fans necessarily that I'm talking about, because while there are probably a small minority of 49er fans that are just like, oh, I don't believe in this guy still, or I can't get behind him, or I couldn't pay him that amount of money, I think the vast majority of 49er fans are excited. I think, dare I say, this is the first offseason that we're not killing each other over quarterback talk, right? Like, think about the combine. John Lynch is relaxed. He's talking about the draft class because they're good now, right? It's not, is Trey going to start? Why is Jimmy still here? Like, that is all out the window now. Like, we have gotten to a place now where if we're arguing about something, it's not the quarterback anymore, unless it's those people that distinctly want to go against what they're watching or what the success the 49ers had last season with Brock Purdy. But I don't think we're arguing about the quarterback anymore. It's kind of a strange time. Things are a little too quiet around here. So I don't know if it's 49er fans. So Let's see. Stafford has won a Super Bowl and his best game versus Baltimore's defense of any quarterback last season and on the road. 100% Rich, and you're preaching to the choir. So when I was talking to Brian about it, I was like, Brian, I was like, again, statistically, definitely not Matthew Stafford's best season. However, this is for you. Watching the film, there's some big boy throws on there. Some big boy throws on there. And speaking to this Baltimore game, that throw to Puka Nacua about 35 yards down the field into the sideline with two defenders on him, where literally the window was this big. It's a big boy throw. 100%. So I wasn't downplaying Matthew Stafford. Also, I didn't know where to land on the Stafford for Brock argument. It's okay to say I don't know, right? Because I'm going to do that rather than jump out the window and say one thing or the other. I think there's valid arguments for both. I think, all right. Stafford is the better thrower of the football. But as we all know, there's more to quarterbacking than that, right? But if you're talking about natural thrower of the football, Matthew Stafford is one of the best that ever, you know? I wouldn't say that he's regressing. He's definitely getting older, and he definitely has injury risk. But if last year was regressing, I don't know. Like I said, that was one of his best seasons on film that he's ever put up there. And that's including those years with Calvin Johnson. I'm talking about like knock your socks off throws that don't turn into touchdowns because obviously they don't make like the highlight reels. But yeah, I wouldn't say that he's regressing. I wouldn't say that he's regressing. He's definitely older and he's definitely an injury risk. That's another thing. But I wouldn't say regressing. I would think that he would be regressing, but after what I saw on film this past year, I don't know if I could say he was regressing. I know Rich doesn't believe that, but don't get Rich started. So, this is a good point too. PFF ranked Stafford's O-line as number 14 last season. Niners had number 24. What exactly would have Stafford done in the Super Bowl with the Niners O-line, given that they didn't give enough time for Brock again? All right. I mean, again, the arguments are very solid on both sides, right? The thing is okay, so some of the plays in which the blitz was coming to Brock, you have to fill the blitz by throwing it into it, right? Meaning, like, that's one of the things that Tom Brady did better than anybody. You get a free rusher, or you see where it's coming from, you throw in that direction because that's where the man advantage is, right? And I think there was one or two times in that game where that's what happened, and Brock either just didn't or couldn't, right? Like, meaning, like, the Chiefs had a really good had their hands up, they were in the throwing lane, so that's not really on him. There's other times where it was there, and he just either turned it down and just went somewhere else, or just like tried to bail out of the pocket. So while I agree 100%, again, the offensive line is clearly a big reason why, the 49ers couldn't finish the job, right? Like with the Spencer Burford mix-up. And also Trent Williams didn't have a very good game, unfortunately, in the Super Bowl. But some of the little things, and I think Brock's going to learn this, and he's going to get much better with it because he's already ahead of the curve. And I think he's already, in terms of processing, he's far along, like a guy in his second year. Is when the blitz is coming and you have a free rusher, you have to throw into it. You have to throw into it. So yeah, I mean, look, again, just for argument's sake, again, I have no strong opinion either way. I see the argument for both, 100%. I see the argument for both. But again, it was just an interesting point that my buddy Brian Peacock brought up. So, all right, guys, 38 minutes in. Make sure you guys like this video, please. It would help me out a lot. Subscribe to the channel. I'm thinking about coming back today or tonight. I mean, Averly's going to be here, so I don't know how much I'll be able to do because she doesn't seem to understand the idea of quiet, while I'm doing these shows. But I'd like to, now that we're talking about kind of like what this offense needs and stuff, I might want to do another film breakdown like of the passing concepts and kind of where Brock exceeded and some of those things. So if it's not going to be today or tonight, maybe next week, most likely. So I'm probably going to end it here, guys, because I just wanted to do a quick show. But thank you guys for tuning in. At the end of the day, like, we'll recap the topics. Adam Schefter says the 49ers absolutely want him. They just don't want him at his price. And he said that they were going for a Super Bowl, so why trade him? Ricky Pearsall signed. and some fun little facts about Brock Purdy if you want to argue with people online who continue to call him a dink and dunker. So I'm Jason. Thank you guys. Have a great day. This is another episode of 49ers Afternoon Talk. Talk to you guys soon. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.